Welcome to I Could Talk to You All Day. I'm Lauren Lefkowitz, recovering workaholic, perfectionist, and people pleaser.
And I'm John Spears, emerging from playing small, getting caught up in the inertia of life, and always being on.
I Could Talk to You All Day is a show for executives and emerging leaders. This is not just another leadership podcast. We're here to talk about what it means to be a leader while also being human.
So join us for raw, vulnerable, and probably pretty funny conversations about shifting from surviving at work and home to thriving in the life you've always wanted. Let's get the conversation started. Hey, Lauren Lefkowitz, how you doing today?
Hey, John Spears. I'm great. How are you?
I am doing so well. I'm always doing well when I'm talking to you. Even when I'm not doing well, I'm doing better than I was before.
Oh, I love that. I love that we're each other's people.
You're my person.
Yeah, you're my person.
My thought partner, and I'm just really grateful. And I know we do this almost every episode, but like lots of it's not bromance. What is it?
It's essentially romance.
Are we bromancing?
Friendmance.
We're friendmancing. Friendmancing.
We also have a really good Instagram DM of memes game going on. Yeah. Where we just like blow each other's minds with other people's sentiments.
Yeah, I love it. That's my favorite thing to do right now is just send memes constantly. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is amazing. Yeah. Check this out. All right, before we dive into our topic today, I want to play a little game between us, and I'm going to ask a question. You love games? I love games. Play games. Yeah. Fun. It's always good. I'm going to ask a question, I'm going to ask the first question, then we can just go back and forth asking ourselves a question or finishing the sentence. And the sentence that I would like you to finish is, and think about whatever's present right now. Don't like preemptively think about this after we go a round or two, but whatever is like present for you in the moment, that's what I want you to share. Even if it's embarrassing. We have to pinky swear right now that's
pinky swear.
Happen. Okay, good.
Yes.
Glad we're aligned. The sentence that I would like you to finish is, if you really knew me, ... Fill in the blank. If you really knew me, ... You go first, then I'll go. And we'll just do like a few rounds of that.
Okay. If you really knew me, you would know that when I look at my kitchen, I wonder what it does.
That's a good one. That says a lot about you.
It does. It does.
On point.
I know a lot about a lot of things and nothing about that. That room is a mystery.
You can turn things on. You know how to turn
I know how to turn things on, and I know like not to have a piece of paper lying on the stovetop. Okay. Like I understand the safety measures.
Got it. So you're at like a 5-year-old kind of level of understanding how to navigate a kitchen.
I understand safety. I don't understand usage.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I love that. Okay. If you really knew me, you would know that I love paddleboarding, and I just got a blow up stand-up paddleboard that I take out on a lake. And it is like the thing that is giving me so much energy. And it's like making the summer amazing.
If you really knew me, you would know how clever I am about talking myself into being okay when I'm actually not.
Ooh. Now we're getting deep. Mine is deep too, I think. It's not like kitchens and paddleboards. It's like, ooh. If you really knew me, you would know that my core in life is to feel safe and secure. And all the behaviors and all the being sometimes that I do around that is aimed at that core motivation of safety, security. I guess you can say being in control or being in the known, so I can perform or I can sort of do what I need to do that. Yeah. Oof.
Motivated by the avoidance of the bad.
Okay. One more round.
Okay. If you really knew me, you would know that I don't wear socks in the house unless I also have shoes on, because of that one time I slipped and fell and broke my shoulders. My lesson was I should either have grip through my bare feet or grip through my shoes. I do own grippy socks, but they make me feel like I'm in a hospital setting.
As you were talking, I was like, just buy grippy socks.
And they're cute. I have cute ones. They're like yoga socks, right?
Oh,
but
nice.
Yeah, I'd rather be barefoot or shoed.
That's making me laugh. Okay. Last one. If you really knew me, you would know that I really love all kinds of junk food, like chips and ice cream and Oreos. The Oreo filling is probably my favorite. But I try to eat healthy, but I don't always succeed because there's such a love for all of that salty, sweet, addictive goodness.
I'm laughing because I remember a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago where you said to me, and this is something we say to each other all the time, what do you need? Right? When one of us is stuck in something, we say, what do you need? And usually it's like, I need you to tell me everything's going to be okay, or I need support on this, or can we talk about this? And I told you what I needed in order to like stop crying and feel better. And then I said, and a cookie. And you said, go get a cookie.
Did you get a cookie?
I did get a cookie.
Nice.
Not only did I get a cookie, I like drove to a place 15 minutes away that has like the big $5.
Yeah.
You cannot eat it in one sitting cookie.
Oh.
And I spent the whole day eating pieces of it. And I ate the whole thing in one day. And I felt better. Sometimes eating junk food does make you feel better. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. And it's not the answer. But that day it was the answer.
Okay, before we move on to our topic, favorite cookie.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is a classic. I don't know if you remember the Great American Cookie Company, which was in all the malls when we were kids.
Yes.
M&M cookies made into a double doozy with the vanilla cream in the middle.
Nice. Okay, I have two. I love a good black and white cookie.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Oh, the icing.
But not a bad one.
Not a bad one.
There are bad ones.
There's never been more of a disparity between like good and bad than the black and white cookie. You can either have like an amazing, blow your mind black and white cookie, and you can also have a black and white cookie that's you're like, oh, I don't ever want to have one of these ever again in my life. And it's like the distance is like very real. That or a like toffee chocolate chip cookie. Oh my God. I love toffee. It's like my favorite candy thing to eat. Okay. Thanks for playing this game. I really appreciate it. I got to know you.
This was fun. And it took my shoulders down a couple of inches, which is nice. Yeah.
I think I'm still up here. Kidding. All right. So today, our topic that we wanted to talk about is well-being. And it's something that I think in the past few years has totally taken a life of its own. We've heard about self-care and all these things that we're doing to kind of take care of ourselves and make us feel better and make us feel good. And what I want to do is talk a little bit about what that looks like as a leader and maybe dispel some of the myths between self-care and well-being, and really thinking about well-being and as leaders and as just humans, how important it is for us to prioritize well-being in our lives, not only for ourselves, but for our friends and family, for the people that we lead, for the organizations and the ecosystems that we exist in. It's something that I just don't hear people talk about a lot in the context of organizations and leadership. And I'd love for us to spend some time kind of sussing it out a bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So Lauren, when you think about well-being, what comes to your mind, particularly as it relates to leaders in the world?
When I think of well-being on the individual level, I think there is such a, like you said, a focus on self-care, which if we're talking about being and doing and having, like we did on our last episode, self-care to me is the doing aspect. And self-care is so individual. You may clear your head by going for a run, where the thought of going for a run for me is like horrifying. I may sit and knit, where the thought of knitting for you may feel boring, right? Or stifling, or I don't want to be sitting here in this same spot for an hour and a half counting stitches. So the act of self-care to me is individualized, which is part of why, and maybe we'll talk about this later, I hate organized fun. Especially
Lauren, oh my God, I love it. Mandatory fun is like the best kind of fun.
Mandatory fun. Please join us for this mandatory fun event that everybody will enjoy because we're all the same.
Totally.
So the self-care is the doing. The well-being is then either the precursor to the self-care that makes us want to do the self-care, or sort of cyclical, the self-care leads us to the well-being. So even though those two things feel very individualized, when we have an opportunity to focus on well-being in the workplace and include building trust, creating psychological safety, embracing inclusion over fitting in, embracing the idea that we don't all work the same way. We don't all need the same breaks. We don't all need the same hours, right? And this is different if you're in an environment where there are appointments, or you are client facing, or the phone rings and you have to pick it up from this time to that time. But that's not who we're talking to. We're talking to our leaders, who typically do have some flexibility in how they manage their schedules. And when we look at well-being from an organizational perspective, there's such a great opportunity to ask people what serves them and to find synchronous and asynchronous ways to promote well-being. If your team is all on board with meditation, and that's something they really enjoy, and it's something they would enjoy together, which is something you would know from getting to know your team, then perhaps there's an opportunity to do a mindfulness exercise together or meditation together. But you have to just do some discovery work first,
Right? Yeah.
Right? To find out what drives your team, what makes them feel well in the workplace. What do they need and what do they want? So that was a little bit of a ramble on that, quite frankly, but there's from my perspective, it's a bottom-up approach. It's a look at the individual and see how does that fit into the circle of your department, your team, your company, in order to create an environment where people are free to tell you what well-being means to them. Mm-hmm. What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of well-being as a leader, and I'm thinking about it as like taking it down to the individual. Like if you're running an organization or your team, or even if you're a leader or a part of any sort of ecosystem, whether it's a family or a community or whatever, I think there are three things to really think about, or that's helping me dissect well-being, what it means to us, and sort of what we're talking about today. The first is, we talk a lot about doing and being, and I think really focusing on the being part of it, right? When I think about well-being, it's about being well, not having dis-ease in our bodies, having a state of harmony, being able to feel refreshed or rejuvenated, or at a place where we're able to show up as our best selves. I know that you've had this experience. I certainly have, is when I'm not taking care of myself and I am not having well-being, I'm not in well-being, I'm way more likely to be defensive or to act out or to be edgy or moody or sharp or terse with people, or be in a state of frustration. But when I'm taking care of myself and when I'm thinking about intentionally how to do that as a leader, I show up better. I show up more effectively. I make better decisions. And so it's not like, this is the only way to do it, but I just think there's a different way for leaders to be. And oftentimes we think, oh, I got to work late. I got to go. I got to do, to the point where we expend all of our energy, all of our battery. We're burnt out. We're exhausted. And that not only has an impact on our lives, it has an impact on our careers, and it has an impact on the people around us, the people who are engaging with us and interacting with us. And the second thing that I really think about is when I think about well-being, I kind of think about it in three different states, right? Like, what is my mental or my emotional well-being? How am I supporting that? How am I taking care of that? How am I giving myself the space to decompress and not to like go where I'm just fried mentally and emotionally? The second is physically, the same sort of idea. Like if I'm just going, and I'm not, for me, it's eating well, it's sleeping, it's getting enough water, it's being out in nature, it's sort of moving my body, and putting things out and kind of putting things in and sort of expending energy in a way that's really serving me. I can totally feel myself not fill up. And the last, and this is really important to me, is spiritually. How am I kind of connecting with my source or the universe or whatever it is that you might believe in, to nourish that aspect of myself? And like I said earlier, I don't hear lots of people talking about that when they're talking about leadership development, when they're talking about making sure you take care of yourself along the way.
And others, right?
Yes.
As you were talking about your second point, I thought of when I was in the corporate environment, especially in my last job, which was where my workaholism like fully got carried away. I had one of the employees who was reporting to me sometimes would come into my office and say, "When was the last time you took a lunch?" So here I am, her supervisor, and she recognized a lack of well-being on my part and looked out for me. And so from a leadership perspective, we all have the opportunity to be involved in leadership that looks out for each other. So we have, some listeners who are CEOs and some listeners who are VPs and directors and managers and individual contributors. Leadership comes in all forms. It doesn't necessarily mean you're managing people. So as we are talking about well-being and looking out for well-being inside your organization, we all have an opportunity for leadership there.
Mm-hmm. Given the importance of well-being and being well as a leader, what do you think some of the inhibitors or things that get in the way of people really prioritizing this?
I think that we often don't look at the work we're doing. We just do it. We do things this way because that's how we've always done them, because that's how they've always been done. And so I think one of the inhibitors is that we're just reacting to our day. So we don't proactively look at what does well-being look like in our day? What does well-being look like in our week? What does well-being look like in our strategic plan? What does compassion look like for ourselves, for each other? And again, we go back to the doing. We do the work so we can have a successful department, we can have a successful company, so that we can be rewarded by good performance reviews and occasional raises. And so that we're not the one who's not working hard. And I think what is missing, and that is the inhibitor, is that we think well-being is a luxury. We don't think well-being is part of it. We think it's a luxury. And we think we'll be in well-being like later. We'll take that on later.
Yeah. That is so powerful that we consider it a luxury or nice to have, when it actually is so core and fundamental to like every aspect of our life, like completely. When I think about why I in the past have not prioritized my own well-being, when I've like gone harder than I should have gone or didn't take a break, two things. I like to speak, as you know, I like to talk in threes. I like to have like 3 points, three
I
buckets.
love how you have lists and I just
lists.
talk.
I like, here are my 3 points. I only have 2 this time. Maybe one will come up. But when I think of well-being, my initial kind of context in which I hear well-being, I think of soft. That's really soft. That's really not a hard skill. You know, when I think about where we both used to live in Washington, D.C., people aren't talking about well-being. Like they're talking about what are you producing? Who do you know? What are you accomplishing? All of the like, do. And it's like, oh, I'm going to leave at 5:00 because I just need a break. I've worked really hard today and I'm going to go like walk in the woods. Like people are like, what? Like it's a little disorienting. And so I have 3. I found my third one. So one, I think people who are type A or who are leaders, for the most part, just think that's like a soft thing. It's like, it's squishy. It's like feel good, woo woo, self-care. Let's get mani-pedis. And it just is not prioritized in the way that some of us think naturally, normally, sort of automatically. The second thing is, I don't think we are in tune with ourselves. I don't think we are creating the space in our lives to really identify and to know what we need and when we need it. I don't know about you, but as I've aged, my capacity has diminished a little bit. My ability to work 16-hour days, as not only do I not want to do that anymore, but like I am just like not able to do that anymore. And so I think a lot of times as we get older, as dynamics change, I mean, I think, you know, and I think about the impact of COVID and post-COVID, my capacity has certainly diminished since then, I feel, to do certain things. And so being in tune with that and being aware of my body and what I'm able to do and what I need has really helped me prioritize that. And when I've not been in touch with myself or in tune with that, I've really struggled to figure out what to do. I've thought, oh, like I got to push through it. I got to work harder. I can't address it. I don't even know what this is, but since I don't know what it is, I'm just going to like push. And that is just, I think from my own experience, an awful experience to have, because we know something's not working and yet we just press on the gas instead of taking a break and trying to get in touch with what's happening and what we actually need. So that's number 2. And the third is, I kind of alluded to it in number 1, but it's, culturally, I just don't think it's a part of our mainstream culture, the way we talk. I mean, you see it a little bit in kind of spiking up in some places. You hear certain people, but for the most part, you know, people who are our age and older, I mean, my first job out of college, no one was talking about well-being. No one was talking about, are you okay? You know, like, you know, it was like, we expect you to get this done. And I think you have now a new generation of leaders who kind of grew up in the early aughts, knots, and sort of were like, you know, brought up that like that, and who aren't well-versed in well-being, and who aren't taking care of themselves internally and physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and thus don't know how to lead an organization of well-being.
And the newest generation coming into the workforce does not stand for that.
Yeah.
They grew up in a world where well-being was talked about.
Yeah.
We grew up in a hustle culture time period. And they are, you know, future leaders. They are going to set the example for us and make it so that as they move into leadership positions, well-being will be a part of the norm. But it's going to take years because we aren't there yet. And we have so many Gen Xers and Zennials and elder millennials who were raised in this work hard, play hard. Do you remember that term?
I do. Yeah.
That work hard, play hard. It was in job descriptions. It was in job descriptions I built. We're a work hard, play hard environment.
Sleep when you die kind of thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Don't you want to be laying on your deathbed talking about how much you got accomplished at work?
Can I just say real quick, I remember it was a long time ago when I was like, I'll sleep when I die. And I'm like, no, can I please have 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night? Like I
And
am
maybe a
not.
midday nap.
Oh, and definitely a midday nap.
Yeah.
There's no on the weekends. There is definitely a nap. Saturdays and Sundays,
Yeah.
and maybe during the week. Well, definitely during the week too. I just if I'm honest, during my lunch break. But yeah, like sleep is like my whole relationship with that has changed. But I just remember it was like hustle, hustle, work hard, produce, work hard, play hard, sleep till you die, sleep when you die thing. And I was like, that is so unappealing to me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that our current work culture has this imbalance because a lot of us were exposed during the pandemic I don't mean to have an exposure pun in there, but a lot of us were exposed. I'll be here all week. A lot of us were exposed during the pandemic to something different. Lived in this hustle culture for so long. We were calling the Gen Zers lazy because every generation calls the next generation or 2 generations later lazy. And now that we have had time to run the dishwasher in the middle of the day and not have that be on our mind that we want to do that before bed, or that we walk the dog in the middle of the day, or that we take a nap in the middle of the day. Now that we've been exposed to that, I see a real reluctance to revert to this hustle culture for most people. But I see more strength in the argument from the hustler people who are like, get back to it. Let's go back to the old way. It worked for us. We were productive. We were successful. The company was performing. And we need to look at what's the balance of that. How do we integrate the people who want the hustle culture back with the people who are saying, I meditate during a 15-minute break now. I'm not going back into the office and trying to sit on the floor of my office on 27-year-old carpet while somebody might come and knock on my door or stand outside my cubicle or stand at my desk. We have to find a way to incorporate what feels good at home into what can appropriately be brought into the office environment and also touted as okay. And not only okay, but encouraged, because I will tell you this, when I get into my doing mode, I'm a mess. Yeah. I can get a lot of things accomplished. I don't enjoy it. I don't feel good about it. When I start my day off with a meditation, which 5 years ago me would laugh at because I don't have time for that. I was too busy. When I start my day off with a meditation, I am more centered. I am more grounded. My work is more thoughtful. It's more fun. And then I'm also thinking about, am I tired enough to take a nap? The answer is yes. I'm always tired enough to take a nap. What do I want to do after I stop working?
Yeah.
How do I want to be engaging with my clients in a way that focuses on their wellness? I notice that when I'm in doer mode, I allow my clients to stay in doer mode.
Right.
So I am healthier for myself and better for my clients, for which that's my team, right? My clients and the vendors I work with, that I am better at being with them and well-being with them and incorporating that with them than when I'm in like full doer mode, which is something we all slip back into because it's what we were trained for. So
Totally.
Well-being has to have some deliberate action related to it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I want to really clear up is a myth about well-being. And kind of, if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, it sounds like these guys aren't talking about working hard or, producing or doing. I don't think that's what we're saying at all. Hey, if taking care of yourself and having well-being doesn't mean you don't work hard, you don't hustle, you don't produce, you don't get stuff done. It just means being in tune with yourself enough to know when you might need to take your foot off the gas a little bit and recharge, or know how to do that on a consistent basis so that you don't get burnt out. And, I think well-being is much more about the awareness and being in tune with yourself and then taking the action needed for your well-being. It's more that than I'm just gonna, chill and not push myself hard. That's not at all what we're saying. It's just the awareness and the prioritization of yourself in this life, as opposed to prioritizing everything else around you and doing until you're burnt out, you're fried, you're tired, you're fragmented, you're just all over the place.
And I love the metaphor of the car, right? If you think about a car driving, it will eventually run out of gas. And then what are you going to do? Get out and push the car until you get to where you're going? That's not how it works. And we do it to ourselves. When you are going for a run, if that's one of your hobbies, at some point you run out of energy for the run. You have to stop and rest.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we understand that in other avenues of life. And in our work lives and as teams and as leaders of teams, we tend to forget it because there's always going to be so much to do. I've never had a job since I was a teenager where my work at the end of the day was done and I was starting with a fresh slate the next day.
Right.
And that's reality, because if you run out of work to do, you don't have a business to run anymore.
Very true.
But it's so important to have that recharge, to plug the electric car into the charger, to refill your car with gas, to nap, to rest, to find the ways that you recharge, to find the ways that your team recharges. And some of that is simply paying attention. When you look around at your team, if you're on a Zoom call or a Teams call, or you're in person and you look and everybody is like sort of drawn and tired and just sort of getting through the meeting, and it feels like everybody is just dragging. There's an opportunity there to catch yourself and catch your team and say, what do we need here?
Yeah.
Do we need a team spa day? Do we need a...
Yes, please.
You're right. I'll take that. Although I do remember early in my career, we were rewarded with a spa day. I couldn't have been more excited. I was getting a massage and a facial and a manicure and a pedicure. And, they gave us a certain allowance and then we could pay more to have more things. And I was like, I want it all. And I had a coworker on my team who did not like to be touched.
Mm.
And she was dreading it. And she conceded to having a massage. And she came out of that massage and she was like, one and done, never again, not interested.
Yeah.
And so you really do have to be thoughtful about what your team likes and embrace the divergence of whatever, right? Preferences, neurodivergence, cultural ideals around how things are and what rest means and what well-being means. And sometimes that means something asynchronous. What if we just gave everybody $100 to go spend on well-being, right? Yeah. So you have to really get to know your team. And you have to notice, and you and I talk about this all the time, you have to start by recognizing what's happening, because it is so easy to just be in your day-to-day and keep going and doing until you collapse.
Yeah. So what would you ask the folks to consider thinking about if folks are wanting to make a shift from the sort of status quo of not prioritizing well-being to really thinking about well-being, incorporating well-being and well-being practices in their lives?
I think at the beginning, you have to be so deliberate about it that you schedule it, that you write it down somewhere, that whether it's an alarm on your phone, whether it's an appointment on your calendar, that there are times and dates where you schedule well-being. Now that can be every day at 2:00, I take a nap. Or it can be every day at 2:00, I set aside 20 minutes for well-being. What I have learned, and first about myself and then about clients and about workplaces, is that sometimes the well-being alarm goes off and we sit and think, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll just watch Netflix. I guess I'll just take a nap. So something that has worked for me is making a list of things I like to do for well-being.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have any ideas, if I see that I have downtime between client appointments, for example, can I go watch Netflix and like whittle away the hours? Sure, I can. And sometimes I do. Sometimes that's the choosing for my well-being, is like, I need to disconnect and be in somebody else's world. But often we go to TV or a podcast or an app as a default because we don't know what else to do with ourselves. So for me, having a list of meditating, reading, and listing the book that I'm reading right now, or the couple of books. I mean, I'm always in the middle of at least 2 books. Or, going for a walk or stretching. These are things I don't naturally think of. But when I have time and I think, what should I spend my time on? Which for a high achiever is hard to just have time and space. It's very difficult to have that. It's hard to carve it out. And then when it pops up on you, your brain says, what should you be working on? And instead, your brain can say, what are our opportunities to promote well-being? And you can do that deliberately for yourself as a first step. And you can extend it to your team by telling them how you're focusing on well-being and asking them about how they are focusing on well-being. What about you? What do you think is a good start?
I think, as everything we talk about here, it first starts with creating space for observation, for observing, for noticing, for creating awareness. So I like to think about, like, what do I need and when do I need it? And I like to break it out in those 3 categories. So for me, it's, like I said, it's mentally, emotionally, it's physically, and it's spiritually. What do I need to be well, to be full in those areas? And when do I need it? To your point, do I need to meditate every day? Do I need to do that 3 days a week? Do I need to take a nap every day? Is it 3 days a week? Is it on the weekends? For me, I think about what time I go to bed and try to be consistent in that, because I know sleep is so important to me. And if I am not getting enough sleep, for me, I don't have a hard time falling asleep. I have a hard time staying asleep. So if I'm not getting that sleep and getting a nice chunk of sleep, I'm just foggy the next day, and that just impacts everything. And if I'm not eating well and feeling like feeding my body with like nutrients that are going to help me do everything I need to do, I just feel sluggish, or I get this kind of that everyone knows what I'm talking about. You eat a ton of sugar and then you crash. It's like, oh, how am I going to get through the rest of this day? So I try to be mindful of that, right? Not to say I don't do that. I started the episode off by talking about how much I love junk food, but I try to be intentional about those things because I know the consequences on the good consequences and the bad consequences if I do or don't fall into certain patterns. And I love that list. Having that list, I think in the training that we did together, it's called Back to Being. What are those things that you can do? Having that list there, broken out in those categories, can be so helpful if you're like, oh, I'm just feeling fried right now. What really brings me joy and kind of fills my battery or fills my cup? Okay, do one of these 5 things or something. Mm-hmm. I think that could be really, really helpful. And the last thing I'd ask folks to consider is starting off small. Oftentimes when we try to incorporate new things into our lives, we like go big and then we find that unsustainable and give up. And so what is like the 1 or 2 things you can do each day or each week to really help you get connected with yourself, kind of fill your cup, etc.
And for those small things, there's a YouTube video for everything. Right? There's a 1-minute meditation. There's a 3-minute grounding. So you're right, John, you don't have to start with big chunks of time, because just like if you go to the gym for the first time in 2 years and you like go hard at it for 2 hours, you're going to be exhausted from it. You're not going to have found it beneficial, and you're not going to want to go back and do it again because it was hard and painful.
Yeah.
So if you ease yourself in little ways and you incorporate in little ways, it's much easier. And it's also easier to figure out what you like. Because when I started meditating, I would open one eye and be like, how long have I been doing it? And I found that if I did a 3-minute or a 5-minute meditation, I could really get into it. Mm-hmm. And then 3 minutes and 5 minutes felt too short. So I went to longer ones. Now I can sit for a half hour, sometimes an hour. I still need a guided meditation. I can't just sit quietly because I will fall asleep sitting up. But if I'm in a guided meditation, you could keep me there for a really long time, but I had to build up to it. So I think that's such a great point, that it doesn't have to, it can be 5 pages in a book. It can be, 2 minutes of breathing. It can be anything that you want to try. And you can decide later, I did not enjoy that. I don't want to do it again and
Yeah.
pick something else.
Yep. Lauren, I could talk to you all day.
All day.
Thanks for connecting. I really enjoyed this conversation about well-being.
We're so grateful you decided to be with us during this episode. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues, and join us next time for more Real Talk.